This week on the show is Michael Leonard. Michael is a financial planner and an advisor with Barnum Financial Group. His focus is to provide families and business owners with assistance in building their financial freedom and eventually becoming a lifetime resource for all his clients. He joins us today to talk about his experience as a financial advisor and hopefully share some tips he's learned along the way. I'm Paul Blanco, and this is Small Steps, Big Wins. Michael Leonard, welcome to Small Steps, Big Wins. I'm so happy to have you on the show today, and I'm excited to have you share your journey and really, besides how you got in the business, but I'd like to talk about the evolution of what you're really doing in PlanSmart, which is doing seminars in the workplace for all the listeners here at major corporations, and then the team that you've built to help you in that. Let's jump right in, Mike. And first, thank you for being here today.
Well, awesome. I'm looking forward to our conversation. We've gotten to know each other, pretty much over the last few years, a lot more in depth.
Correct.
And, I'll kind of give you a little beginning, how I started.
Yeah, I'd love
some of my transitions into the industry.
Yeah. Can you, let's start there. So
okay.
How you got in this business?
Well, first off, I was born and raised in Chicago. So I grew up in the big city, public schools, was one of those kids that just gravitated to everybody. So the diversification of the individuals was really important to me. I grew up in my family business. I don't know if you're aware of that. Our family business used to be bicycle stores.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I did that. And, what interesting with there is my dad always wanted us to be in a business. He wanted us to learn how to be entrepreneurs and owners. So, that's really where some of my skills that I've translated into this industry have started, being in a business, dealing with people on a daily basis. And then my dad gave me some tough love as we're in our 20s and you started learning how to become a business owner. So you okay if I share a couple of those tough love stories?
Please, I'd love to hear them.
Real short. First off, being in retail, my dad always told us, and it took a little while to sink in. He said that the hours on the door are for the customers. They're not for you. We pay rent 24 hours a day.
I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that, and I'll give your dad the credit for that. But go ahead, keep going.
So that was one thing that I thought was really interesting, that he's always like, you know what, you can, if you want to build this, you can build this 24 hours a day. So I had transitioned in my late 20s, early 30s. I wanted to try and get out of retail. And I was introduced to somebody that was in the financial field, but I couldn't take a leap of faith. I didn't know anything about this industry at all. So I found a company that let me start part-time. As a matter of fact, starting in financial planning and my bike stores, I was part-time almost 6 years. So now I'm in my mid-30s, still figuring out what I'm going to do. And then I took the leap of faith and I 100% jumped into this industry. And in 2004, I moved from Chicago down to Charleston, South Carolina, and I found City Street, Travelers, MetLife. Kind of we've shared the same path from there, Paul.
Wow. And how long were you on that side? You were on the 403B side when they got merged into MetLife, and that's when MetLife.
Interesting enough, when I started there, they gave me a little bit of a territory down in Charleston. They said, here's 18 schools, go get them. And I didn't even know what go get them meant at this point, but I figured a way to get to most people was if I can get a few minutes in a faculty meeting, maybe I can talk to a few more people at a time. So over time, it grew. Where in South Carolina, I started working with the colleges, the hospitals, still in the 403B market, all by myself, the old proverbial lone wolf. But then I decided, the only way I could grow this is I got to get some help, get an assistant. So once I got an assistant, this is when the business really started to grow. And as a matter of fact, that was my first taste of RetireWise, probably 15 years ago or so.
So for all the listeners, just to clarify, you'll hear us use words here like PlanSmart. PlanSmart is a national program that we helped found it for MetLife back in the early 2000s. And it's where we do financial education in the workplace for major corporations. And RetireWise is one of the workshops, the 4-part series. That's the core program to these workshops. So you started delivering those 15 years ago. And
yeah, down here, again, in Charleston, there was not a lot of corporate opportunities. So I started taking opportunities in the Atlanta area and became a road warrior where I was putting 50, 60,000 miles a year on my car.
Wow.
We all remember those days, right?
How far a ride is it? You would drive from Charleston to Atlanta. How far is that ride?
Oh, only 5.5 hours without traffic.
Only. So the guys here that are going into New York, that were going into New York City on an hour train ride, I shouldn't hear that. I shouldn't listen to their complaints.
Not at all. So while I was starting to begin the RetireWise, I still kept and maintained my traction in the South Carolina colleges, hospitals, et cetera. And as a matter of fact, that's when I brought PlanSmart or RetireWise to my hospitals and colleges. And that was an important transition because now I was able to get in front of more people in a shorter period of time. So I'm working corporate now and still working the K through 12 higher ed marketplace. But remember, still in person, right?
Yeah. And so let's think about that for a second. I think there's a big point there for advisors. You got into, sometimes where you get into an opportunity through one thing, you expanded it from just being the 403B guy to really being the planner of choice by putting in this program and being more diverse in terms of the depth that you can offer clients.
That's exactly right. And when you're transitioning a little bit more to corporate, you still don't want to give up what you've built. So even to this day, I'm still doing the RetireWise series for USC, College of Charleston, the Medical University, Clemson, all in South Carolina, while I've, brought in all these corporate clients as well. So as this all started to grow, Paul, I was like, I can't do this all by myself. So that's when I started to bring in other team members, but I quickly learned that the only way I was going to grow is I needed to develop a system, something that's duplicatable, that we could take the thought out of what we're trying to accomplish and see more people.
Yeah. So tell me how that works and what you did.
Absolutely. So as you know, my business fairly well, and that is my business pretty much is almost 100% PlanSmart RetireWise. So how I work my classes now is, of course, now it's all on Zoom and Teams, which is incredible. Even today, it's 3:00 in the afternoon, and I already taught 3 classes just today. But what I do is now I have 12 planners on my team. And when I'm working with a company, I bring one of my planners in with me to the company. So what I'll do, Paul, is I'll teach the class the material, and we'll go through some of the ways that I help get the audience involved.
Yeah, I can't.
But I bring in my planning partner for the chat feature, so they're keeping an eye on the chat. But then eventually when we set up the one-on-one consultation, they're the ones that do it, not me. But they've already been introduced to the group as my partner.
Gotcha. So can I clarify something, though? They're the ones that do the meeting or book the meeting, and then you do it with them, or do they do that first meeting by themselves?
They do that first meeting by themselves. The entire fact finder will explain in RetireWise what the expectations are. We're going to find out about your goals and your situation, et cetera. After that meeting is completed, then they'll start gathering the documents as usual and putting together the plans.
So can I go backwards a little bit? It sounds like when you introduce them as a partner on the Zoom today, you're really they're not just manning the chat and doing some other things. You're really positioning them as an extension of you so that they have credibility when so how do you do that? Is Is there a way that you do that to build that for them?
Absolutely. So I'll have them a little bit involved in the conversation, but really what I'm going to do is introduce them. Of course, they'll have their camera on, looking nice and professional, and I'll put them on the pedestal. This individual, I'll use a name, for example. Let's say I'm working with Lynn Carney, one of my advisors, now Lynn Mack. But what I'll do is I'll introduce her as my partner. I'll tell her about her experience and how she's an incredible financial planner. And I just put her on the pedestal. So that way, when they see her on the initial consultation, they're not surprised because it's not me.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. And do you say that towards the end of the workshop that, Lynn will be reaching out to you later on to set up the consultation, or how do you position that?
Yeah, absolutely. Throughout the classes, we'll definitely introduce and let them know the process. And as a matter of fact, my administrative team from there actually sends the Calendly link for Lynn's calendar, gets it on her schedule, and then we monitor getting the documents, et cetera, so we can get to the recommendations at some point.
Great. So keep going now. Good. I'm glad.
Okay. So that's an important piece of what I do. I know a lot of my colleagues kind of do a lot of this all on their own, but I'm trying to grow, and the word you love using, scale, so I can duplicate myself more. Again, example, teaching 3 classes just today.
Yeah.
Now, from there, I think one of the most important parts of the presentation on Zoom and Teams is the equipment. I use Microsoft Surface Pro, and the reason I use that is because I'm able to write on the screen. Great. Not with my cursor trying to write. I use my actual pen. So what I'm able to do, Paul, is when I'm focusing on a topic or a piece of advice, I can circle it or I can write on it and put arrows. And my feedback always is, thank you, we're able to follow along with exactly what you're trying to accomplish.
Well, if you look at some of my documents, I keep like a running to-do list, but it's a to-do future list to impact the firm. And one of them on there, the wording is face-to-face versus Zoom. And it just triggers me to say, so what you're doing is you've created by drawing. There's, my dad used to tell me that these isms in life, like don't put all your eggs in one basket, or what you're doing is a picture is worth 1,000 words. They're around and stood the test of time because they're real. So many people probably drew on an easel or on a board when they were teaching these face-to-face, and they stopped doing it once we got into the Zoom. So you kept going. So keep going. So how frequently do you do that?
Absolutely. So I'm doing it virtually on every slide.
Wow.
So when we're following along, we're circling a word or underlining a phrase, or, for example, some of the things I'll ask a question for example, when we talk about inflation, they give you an example of what a car cost back in the 80s versus today. So I'll ask them in chat, tell me what the first car you bought. So then my financial planning partner comes back in, and I can see the chat, but I pretend I don't, because I want them to do it and get involved and read the answers. So I'm keeping the audience involved, constantly asking questions.
It's amazing. And when you ask a personal question like that, do people respond with their first car in there?
They really do. It's so interesting.
So once again, they can't be just have you on no camera and just say, I'm going to listen, but not really listening. But you're trying to gather their attention more by making it interactive with the drawing and then bringing some questions that are personal.
Absolutely. In addition, we always make sure we understand whether it's a corporation or a school, or, for example, we do the financial planning for the entire state of North Carolina. We understand their benefits inside and out. Right. So when I ask a question like, are you in the pension system, or did you pick the optional retirement plan? Put your answer in chat. Now I'm starting to get a feel for the audience, so I can gear my presentation around who is in the audience, because you don't even know who they are, because most people don't even put on their cameras. They're in listen mode, but now I know they're there. They're active. They're listening.
I love that. And have you ever had where you don't get a lot of the answers? And do you go back and say, hey, what's going on, or what?
I will. I'll goof around. I say, I know you're out there. I can't see you, but I know you're out there. And I'll even say things like, the reason that I can be energetic about this class and your materials, I know you're there. So it's going to help me help you. So I really, again, it's such an important piece. Also, Paul, one of the other things we do really well is when the Zoom is about, or the class is about ready to start, I always get on super early, at least 10 minutes. Even this podcast, I was waiting for you because I want to make sure, number one, my technology is working. Right. But number two, as people start to log in, guess what we do? We say hi to them.
Yeah. And once again, I'm saying this because, when Zoom first started, people took it seriously, but not to the level you are, because they said, maybe this is going to go away. It's not. So what you've done now is, in the old days, when you showed up at that company and you drove 5.5 hours, you were in there early and you were shaking hands and saying hello to people. You're creating the same thing today. And I think many advisors, not only for this thing, but for other meetings, don't show up. I have a trick. I take like 3 minutes ahead of time to go on my Zooms usually. And I just sit there, and sometimes it's just my only peaceful time. Someone jumped on the other day and I said, hey, you're stealing my idea here. Get off. I need 3 more minutes. So, but I love that. So you say hello, and what else happens in that 10 minutes?
Yeah. So I'll give you an example. One of the classes today was for a hospital case. And I asked them, it was session 1. So the first question I asked is, what do you all do for the hospital? What's your responsibilities? Let's get a little feel for the room. And also, maybe you can even meet some of your colleagues that are on here too, and you probably know some of them.
And is that a chat question?
That's a chat question. Yeah. Well, I'll verbally say it, but I'll ask them to put the answers in chat. Or some people are pretty brave. They do put their cameras on, and they'll talk like you and I are today. So either way, but boy, oh boy, it's so fun to see people get involved. We know it's all about caring about them, not about us.
Yes. Well, it's great stuff. So keep going. I love these tips that you're giving.
Absolutely. So
by the way, just time out for 1 second, Michael. By the way, all the listeners here, this is obviously seminars that he's doing in schools, hospitals, and corporations, but any seminar that you do or workshop, these are all basic principles you can use, including the drawing. You could use that obviously for any client. So keep going.
Yeah. So then when we bring the deliverable, their financial plan, same idea is, we'll put up their plan on Zoom, share the document, write on it, but now it's their numbers. What we're doing, Paul, is we're taking the concepts we teach in these classes and we're applying it to their situations.
I love it.
And then, we're kind of the same age-ish, a few years older than you. But can you imagine back in the day that people would give us money, millions of dollars, and would never shake their hand?
No, I know. And I knew that would happen from this, but it's hard to believe sometimes when you think it through. So can I go backwards before you get to the meeting part? So you do the workshop, and some of them are just one part lunch and learns, and then some of them are this 2, 3, or 4-parter. But you use an example of Lynn on your team. If she's the partner on with you, what is the follow-up like? So your assistant helps the first day and sends out the Calendly link, and let's just make it up, 50% of them actually book. Does Lynn follow up with them on the phone to get the meetings, or how's your follow-through work?
Well, technology is incredible, right? So when they go into the Calendly and they schedule, it automatically sends the Zoom link.
Yep.
Right off the bat. So then, of course, Lynn is going to be waiting on the Zoom. And we use a visual when we do our fact finders of pretty much building a 4-story house. We're going to have a strong foundation, and we're going to work our way up. We're going to talk about all the pieces. But while we're explaining that, by the way, which I already explained in class, Now she started to take notes and ask questions. And then quickly the conversation goes into, it's all about them. What are your goals? Where are you at? What are you trying to accomplish? What are your pain points, et cetera? All, again, we teach the same fact finder to all the advisors. So if I was teaching a class and Lynn couldn't make it, one of my other advisors could pop right in, do the exact same thing, nothing special.
Yeah.
Then from there, we use the e-money tool where folks can upload their documents securely. And that's when we start putting the planning together with the recommendations, et cetera. From there, I love this piece. What we put in place is we have a phenomenal administrative team headed up by my favorite person on my administrative team. I shouldn't say favorite, but my Amanda is just phenomenal, licensed and support. But she takes it from there. My advisors don't do the applications, right? They're going to go see somebody else.
Got it.
We have support for that. I don't even know how to fill out a document anymore, Paul. That's not my career path anymore. My career now is teach classes, help my advisors close. That's really what my business has evolved to.
Well, go backwards for a second again. So you book as many as you can through the tools that you have, but then do they actually reach out and call and say, you didn't respond yet, and try to get them?
No, at that point, the Zoom link goes into their calendar, it goes into our calendar, and we just expect that they're going to be there. And they show up.
Got it.
Everybody shows up.
Great. And then when you're teaching, is there points through the workshop that you're talking about the actual meeting that they get? If it's the 4-part or the 5th sessions are free, do you bring that up through the thing? And do you set up the actual appointment through the meeting?
Yeah. Well, as we know, these classes are educational, number one.
Yep.
Right? We got to be careful on how we set things up. So in a lunch and learn, a topical, of course, we'll bring up in that 1 hour that they'll have the opportunity to do the one-on-one. A lot of times we've been working with this company or school for many years, so they know us. But in the RetireWise, how I've done it in our practice is in session 1, I'm a little bit softer. They're just getting to know us still. But I say we're going to talk about that a little bit more next week or in the week after. I want to build rapport. Sure. I don't want to go right to, here's an appointment.
Yep. So go ahead, keep going.
Yeah. So as we go along in session 4, it definitely explains the process. And our process, again, is we set up the initial consultation where we're going to ask the questions with one of my advisors. After that, we're going to send you an email with the list of items to send over to start creating your plan, upload into eMoney. And then they, again, taught by our system, Lynn would then say, Michael and I are going to put together your plan. So she's always bringing me back into the conversation. I'll pop back on the Zoom with Lynn and we'll do it together.
Yeah, it's great. So you know what you're getting into because they're uploading. So let me ask you this, like uploading documents is something newer to the industry, 5-8 years maybe. Do clients have a hard time doing that, or is it explained pretty well and no one comes back and says, I'm not doing this, or like?
We get a little bit of everything, because we have a little bit of a copy paste system. When we send them the email of what documents to send up, we send a brochure about the security of the vault and the website. We tell them how to do it. So we're going to coach them. But to your point, Paul, sometimes we work with folks that's just not their thing, technology.
Yep.
So then maybe we'll have to scan and attach a document or verbally take the document.
Got it. So you're flexible, but the bulk of the people follow the process.
Yeah, I would say probably about 90% are pretty happy with uploading the document, again, because we teach them how to do it too.
Yeah, it's great. So, all right, come on, give me some of the big takeaways here. This is amazing, Michael. Thank you.
One of the things I think that's important is being competitive. One of the things that as I was starting to grow my business, back in my MetLife days, we used to get reports on a monthly basis who was doing what, like we get now at Barnum as well. And I look at those. So back in my day, I had a moving target. His name was Jim Deemer. Today, now he's my partner, but he was always my moving target. I never even knew who he was, but his numbers were all so much greater than where I was at. So now it's fun to see that we've become partners. We're equal in our business activity. But I think that's important to be competitive. It's important to track your goals. We were talking a few minutes before we got on. It's fun to not only set goals, but to hit them.
Yeah. And listen, I mean, I've watched you over the last 36 months really double your practice in 36 months, and I don't see any end anytime soon. So it's amazing what you're doing.
Yep.
It's incredible.
And then we kind of go back a little old school because we still have to ask for referrals, right? Or, the other thing we like doing, Paul, is when we complete a class and the folks become clients, when we do a new class, my administrative team goes back to the folks that came to the old class to talk to them about inviting their colleagues, right? Word of mouth. So we're trying to drive the attendance. Yeah. We're not just hoping people show up. We're actually working with the companies directly and the people.
So is there a way that they do that? Do they send them an email and ask them to invite their friends, or do they call them? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, through the back office of MetLife with our PlanSmart associates, we'll get a PDF brochure about the next class.
Got it.
So we'll circle back and send that as an attachment. I don't know if you noticed, but we just started advertising a new class. And or when they're clients, we'll go back on a Zoom, review our plan, and then ask for referrals for more people into class. And I'll tell you what, I think that's increased our attendance. I don't know the exact numbers, but I would guess somewhere 10, 15%.
It's amazing. All right. Give me your last couple of tips here.
Last couple tricks. Well, I think it's ultimately just keeping your head down. When I started to work with MetLife, my manager back in the day said, if you just put your head down, all the goodies are on the other side of 5 years. Remember those verbiages people used to tell us all the time? But you know what? I'm still at that point. I just keep my head down. What's nice, though, is with this Zoom virtual Teams environment, is you're able just to do so much more in a single day. So I always say, look at your goals, look at them on a daily basis, track them. But Paul, one of the things that I really love to do now, and I know you love this as well, is you love to see your advisors grow. You love to see them succeed. Last year, every one of my advisors made over 6 figures. And often when I found them, they were struggling in the business.
Yeah, it's amazing. And that's a testament to you and the structure you've built. So, as we look at this, I know you teach a ton. I know you actually bring in some of your own venues yourself, how you talked about how you transitioned some. I guess my last question for you is what's next for you and the team?
Great question. Well, you know what? It's hard to stop growth.
Yep.
And you're seeing that at Barnum.
Well, momentum is an amazing thing. You could have momentum positively or negatively. So obviously you have it positively. So
absolutely. And, I'm still in the game like you, and I love doing what we're doing. And the systems here, we don't have to think about joining a firm, mergers from Met to Mass anymore. We're just working, seeing more people. So from here, I'm in my early 60s now. So I'm trying to balance more of life and business together. My wife and I recently sat down and said, let's start doing some more of the things we want to do in retirement now.
Right.
So we just recently purchased an RV. So we started doing a little RV-ing. We've always had a boat, so we like to be on the water. But I'm trying to be better at balancing family and activities and business, because I have a tendency to go on to the business side because I love the growth and I love, the business. But I'm really starting to balance it much better, but still not easy.
Yeah. And listen, I commend you for that. And I think that as people grow in life, one of the big things for me as a leader at Barnum is to make sure that not only you're great advisors, but the Vince Lombardi line was, he said, they asked Vince Lombardi, how do you win football games? You create these great football players. He said, no, I create these great men. So when I think of that statement, it's the same thing here at Barnum. We're trying to create great people, and great people doesn't mean just great business owners, but it means great husbands, brothers, sisters, kids, and great in their communities. And you're doing that. So I commend you for that. And I bet you by doing some of the things you're doing personally, it's driving the business professionally. And
Absolutely.
as I was thinking about it, for some of the younger people, they probably have heard of Frank Sinatra, but not everybody did. But it's the Frank Sinatra model, right? You show up and perform. You don't move the pianos. You don't do the back office. You don't check the speakers and the music. You have a team of associates and a team of advisors that come in behind you. And your skill set is to organize and be really efficient at these and get as many people in the workshop to engage and to actually take the meetings. Because if they don't take the meetings, then obviously you don't impact the client. Maybe you do a little bit because of the education, but you've done that in spades, Michael, and you should be really, really proud of yourself and your team. So congratulations. And I hope for the listeners here, you go back and play this again, because I called them tips. He called them tricks. It's kind of funny, but the tricks of the trade are really there. And I do think that many advisors in our industry, I say it every episode, that COVID was so bad, but so many good came of it. But what you're doing now is you've made Zoom sort of face-to-face in the way you've handled it, and the sincerity that you have and the empathy. I think knowing their benefits and asking some of those questions and getting that engagement early has really differentiated you. So congratulations again. And I appreciate all you've done.
Thank you. And again, last thing, the transition to Barnum has been a blessing as well. With all the support from your team, starting with PlanSmart, with Elizabeth and her staff, all the folks, you included, Mindy, we couldn't be where we're at today without support. And I take what you've done for us, and I'm trying to do that for my team.
I appreciate you paying it forward like that. And that means the world to me, because that's why I do that. And everybody else, small steps, big wins, Apple, Spotify, give us great ratings. If you're seminar selling, go back and revisit this one a couple of times. Michael Leonard, thanks for being on today, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, Paul.
You got it. Thank you for listening to Small Steps, Big Wins. Please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
PlanSmart is a product of MetLife Consumer Services Incorporated, MCS. MCS administers the PlanSmart program and has arranged to have specially trained third-party financial professionals offer financial education. The financial professionals providing financial education are not affiliated with MetLife, but are providing the program under a service provider contract. Any content information provided as part of the PlanSmart program is for educational purposes only. It is not intended to provide legal, tax, investment, or financial advice, or make any recommendation as to whether any investment or savings option is appropriate for you. Each individual's legal, tax, and financial situation is unique. Therefore, you should consult with your own attorney, accountant, financial professional, or investment advisor regarding your specific circumstances. MetLife does not provide legal, tax, or investment recommendation or advice. Third-party financial professionals provide securities and investment advisory services offered through qualified registered representatives of MML Investor Services, LLC. Member SIPC, 6 Corporate Drive, Shelton, Connecticut, 06484. Telephone number 203-513-6000. MMLIS is not affiliated with MCS or any of its affiliates. All opinions expressed by the program participants are solely their current opinions and do not reflect the opinions their respective parent companies or affiliates or the companies with which the program participants are affiliated. Investments or strategies mentioned in this program may not be suitable for you, and you should make your own independent decision regarding them. This material does not take into account your particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs, and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. You should strongly consider seeking advice from your own investment advisor. Securities and investment advisory services offered through qualified registered representatives of MML Investor Services, LLC. Member SIPC, 6 Corporate Drive, Shelton, Connecticut, 06484, telephone number 203-513-6000.